Hello everyone, this is Shakira. I will be doing my presentation on the triangle fire. Before I talk about the fire, I want to go over the concept first. So, I chose the Great Gray Lady because this is a concept that we learned earlier in the semester, but it applies to the articles that I've chosen in this time frame. Around this time, there was a thing called yellow journalism, where Hearst and Pulitzer they were trying to redefine newspapers and how it was presented. They wanted to incorporate pictures, more pictures. They wanted to experiment with different styles of writing and comic strips to attract more buyers and advertising. Um, but the New York Times, it refused to do that for many, many years afterwards. So it maintained very few pictures, conservative style writings, serious tones, no comic strips at all. I had an example for you. Yeah, that's just one article. Um, I chose New York Times as a legacy press because it's one of the largest legacy presses that I know. It was established in 1851. It's a legacy press because it's a mass media institution. It had the resources and it was well established to where it could reach a mass audience, and it had, as I said, resources like economics to cover stories from a large magnitude, and it could see cover the story in different perspectives. So, my first article is Men and Girls Die in Waste Factory Fire Trapped High Up in Washington Place Building, Streets Strewn with Bodies, Piles of Dead Inside. Okay, so this was a day after the fire. Fire started on March 25th, 1911. This is still a developing story at this point. Fire started at 4:40 in the afternoon in the Ash Building in New York City. It started on the eighth floor and eventually traveled to the ninth and 10th floor, which coincidentally is all of the floors for the Triangle Waste Factory where it started. Um, the Triangle Waste Factory was a sweatshop that made waist shirts, which is a common popular women's blouse. At the time, 141 victims were discovered to be dead, and at least 125 were girls from the age of 16 to 23. This all happened in less than 30 minutes. By the time the fire department got there, it was already around 30 to 40 bodies laying in the street because they had jumped out of the windows because the doors were all locked except for one. But that door had flames blocking the exit. One narrow fire escape that couldn't hold even more than 30 people at a time. So everyone decided to jump. And those that didn't jump, they were discovered to be dead at the door of the locked doors. It was already discovered that before this major fire, there was already four prior fires reported at that building, and it was considered unsafe. However, the owners of the building still used it. Whitman seeks to fix responsibility. This is the district attorney Whitman at the time. He wants to file manslaughter charges for the owners of the building. He thought they had disregard for a human life and they didn't follow proper fire and safety regulations. He hired his own fire investigators and inspectors, and he found that there was a single fire escape, and that was inadequate for, at the time, there were 600 people inside the building. That fire escape couldn't even hold 30. Um, the doors needed to be placed outwards, so when you open the door, it would go out and it would be a clear way to the stairs. But these doors were faced inward, and the doors were locked, which during sweatshop times, that was a common practice. Many employers locked doors so that their employees wouldn't be caught taking longer breaks than usual or going home without permission. A single bureau for fire prevention was proposed. During that time, there were different levels of government regulating different fire preventions. The state would be in charge of the sprinklers, but the local government would be in charge of the doors and fire escapes. So one single bureau was proposed so that it would be just one regulation, one rule to follow, and easier to prevent this disastrous event. And the last one, which was happened 3 days after, which was a fire escape laws to be strengthened. Senator Wainwright, he wanted to investigate, he began investigating industrial incidences like deaths and injuries from factories. He wanted to make sure also that they had fire laws and regulations in factories and mercantile establishments. If they did, he wanted to make them better. The Ash Building was the start of enforcing all fire regulations because America did not want this incident to happen again. It was a tremendous amount of loss in a short amount of time. So this was the turning point in laws to make sure that we have the things we have now. Historically and culturally, this is situated because historically, this happened in the Gilded Ages, which is where America has transitioned from from the agricultural industry into the industrial industry, and as a result, more factories and mercantile workplaces were becoming predominant. Many immigrants moved to the cities to occupy these jobs. Culturally, the working conditions, as I said, that was a norm in these sweatshops because there were no regulations on human rights, and employers didn't really have to follow any guidelines. The working conditions in factories were very poor. There was long working hours and locked doors. So this, unfortunately, was common. It just happened to be a tragedy. But this is a very important tragedy because it's the reason why we have the things we do now, like the doors that face outwards, exit signs, sprinkler systems. This all started after this event. And so I think this is very important to learn our history and to know why we have the things we do now, and it's to pay homage to those who lost their lives for that. So thank you for watching. Bye.